Hi there. This is a book you really need to get. It will remind you of so many great times. What is it? Well, it's called Rock and Roll Fantasy and it's been put together by a guy called David Roberts. It's available through This Day in Music. And what it is, it's all about the band Free and Bad Company, which of course there is a lineage there. Simon Kirk and Paul Rodgers were both in Free, founder members of course, and founder members of Bad Company. Now, what I would like to show you is some of the pictures inside here. Obviously there's a copy of the single which came out all those years ago, and a lot of these things here are notes from various people, from Paul. I mean, both Paul and Simon have written an introduction to the book, but basically it's the fans that have been sort of recalling their memories of the band, both bands in fact. And there's also a couple of things with Andy Fraser and Paul Kossoff as well, but it goes right the way back. And this is Black Cat Bones, I think, and I know that is the Black Cat Bones album, which came out a few years ago. It's a double CD with lots of rare tracks and live tracks on it. Of course, Paul Kossoff, and I think for a while, Simon Kirk was in Black Cat Bones. Basically one of the bands that kind of prospered during the British blues boom about 67, 68. What we also have here, though, is going through the years, 1969, which is essentially the year that the second Free album came out. They were formed in 68, and then the first album there, as you can see, is Tons of Sobs. So there's lots of really nice images here. There's the band, of course. That would be the original Pink Line label, the Pink Island label that the album was released on. And it's some of the things, there's a really moody shot of the band in 1969. You look at that band, you just look at them and you think there's no messing with these guys. And of course, Free, they really were. They were all young guys. I mean, I think when the band was formed, Andy Fraser was only about 16. Paul Kossoff and Paul Rodgers were only about 18, and I think Simon Kirk was 17. They were a young band, but they made a really big impact. Of course, they were mentored by another great British blues musician, Alexis Corner, who had his hand in so many bands and artists coming through. He was a great mentor. Now, here you have more photos of Free back in the day, and I only saw Free on the very last tour that they did, which was the Heartbreaker tour. By that point, Andy Fraser had left, and they brought in Tetsu and Rabbit, who'd recorded an album with Simon Kirk and Paul Kossoff, oddly enough titled Tetsu, Kirk and Rabbit, or Kossoff, Kirk, Tetsu and Rabbit. But we do have a lot of great photos in here and some great memories. I'm actually in here as well, because I remember seeing Free, but I also, Paul Kossoff's band, Backstreet Crawler, I remember seeing that, and I saw them, and the memory is in here, so I'll tell you what it is. I saw them at the Liverpool Empire. Now, this was just after Paul Kossoff had been seriously ill in hospital. Here you go. There's a picture of me talking. That's me in my backyard with my Hofner violin, bass guitar, and my memory. But goodness me, look at the flares there. Enough cloth to fully rig a schooner. But I have some great memories of Free and Bad Company. I thought the second gig they ever did was at the Liverpool Stadium. It was not. It was about the fourth or fifth gig. But I think the first gig was in, I think it was probably in Germany, but I think the first British gig was up in Newcastle, which is fair enough. Home turf, I guess, for Paul Rodgers. But I remember seeing the gig and I was very surprised. I think they did Easy on My Soul, which is a Free song, I think it was from the album Heartbreaker. And they also finished as the encore with the Steeler. And I know that occasionally they would throw in All Right Now, because at the time, Bad Company, well, they didn't even have an album out when I went to see them. The album didn't come out until later I think it was late spring, early summer. So they didn't have a massive repertoire to call upon. Of course, later in 75, they had two albums behind them and they were touring America then. They really did have an absolutely tight, a really sort of zipped up show for the audiences in America, and it rocked hard, believe me. They were a great band. I saw Bad Company for the last time in the 70s, again at Liverpool. I saw both nights at the Liverpool Empire, and there was a bit of a delay for the first night. And what I didn't realise at the time, that the band had been involved in a car crash. Well, three of them. Bos Burrell had been in Liverpool earlier to do an interview with a local radio DJ called Phil Easton. And when the band walked on, they were a little bit shaky. And I thought, wow, this is a bit odd, because normally they were very, very tight in the live situation. But they were a little bit sort of, I don't know, apprehensive, shaky, to say the least. And I found out later it was because they'd been involved in a car crash. Second night, of course, when they played, no problems at all. Really hit the money. And I really liked the Desolation Angels album as well. And they played a lot of material from that particular album. I loved it. Again, another venue that I saw Paul Kossoff's band, Backstreet Crawler, was the Liverpool Empire. And again, Paul, as we know, struggled with substance abuse, and it was a great shame because he was an amazing person, and he was actually a lovely guy. I met him a number of times, but I met him backstage at the Empire, and he was very nice. He was really friendly. Hey, hope you enjoyed the show, and he was great at the sound check. And I was backstage when they brought him back in for the gig, and they literally carried him in, which was a great shame, because not that it wasn't a bad gig, it was a great gig, but Paul used to have this habit of leaning up against the Marshall amps, and when he was playing his solos, and unfortunately he probably stepped forward a little further than he thought, and when he leant back he went right over. Of course the whole audience was like that, but the band kept playing and Kossoff got up, and of course everyone was cheering Kossoff, Kossoff, and it was quite a moving occasion, to be honest with you, because I think everybody loved Paul. But I think Paul had a lot of problems, and I think the problems stem from maybe when Free split, because I think he always viewed himself as the guitarist for Free, or in fact the guitarist for Paul Rodgers. And Paul Rodgers said, not that long ago actually, that if Paul Kossoff had still been alive, he would definitely be working with him now. But there's lots of things. There you go. There's a wonderful picture of Paul's Les Paul guitar. No, he could make that talk, literally. And Paul had a few guitars. I know one of them, the white Stratocaster he used to play, and the one he played on the Heartbreaker tour, that is actually now owned by Dave Murray of Iron Maiden. He's changed it round a bit. But I know one guitarist who went into the studio at Ireland when they were recording the album Heartbreaker, and he saw the actual guitar in the studio leaning up against the amp, and somebody said, well, that's Paul Kossoff's guy. He said, do you think he might have had a quick play on it? And the guy went, no. Anyway, he said, I picked it up and it kept howling feedback. I couldn't control the feedback on it or anything. And he said about half an hour later, Paul Kossoff walked in, put it over his shoulder, played it. It sounded amazing, and he didn't do anything with it. So I think it was one of these things where Paul was the natural talent. There's never been a guitarist like Kossoff. And there's so many great memories in here, a lot of them probably like mine, where they met the band. You see in here signed photographs, and it is dated as well, and they go through various chapters. Here's another one that I remember. This would be from 1972. This is the Wishing Well. That looks like an American import. No, it might not be actually, because I think in America they were on A&M, but that's certainly the Island label. And in fact, Can't Get Enough, the first Bad Company single, was on that. It's called the Pink Rim Island label rather than the Pink label. But this is a fabulous book. It's available through This Day in Music. There's a wonderful photograph of Andy Fraser's post-free band. They were called Sharks. And Chris Spedding was the guitarist in Sharks. And I saw them once at the stadium. And I must say, it was a big departure from what they did, what Andy Fraser did from Free, but he didn't last in the band long. He only made the one album with them. I think it's called First Water, and he left after a car crash. He said to me, oh gosh, when the Free DVD came out, I interviewed him, and he said, oh, I'm afraid I just couldn't carry on with that. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something when I came out of Free, but I kind of jumped in too quick, and it didn't really work out musically for me. He then continued as a solo artist with the Andy Fraser Band and various other projects. But this book, if you're a Free and Bad Company fan and all those connected bands with you, there's the Desolation Angels Era from 1979. It was a really, really successful tour, both in the UK and America, which took place sort of in 1979. I don't really think they did very much in the following years, although in 1982 Rough Diamonds came out, but I'm pretty sure they didn't tour then. I don't think they reformed Bad Company with the original lineup until the 90s, late 90s at that. But there's lots of great information in here, but generally, and the great thing is, these are fans' memories. And I must say, a lot of them really reflect my memories as well. So it's great to have a book out where the fans have a say about the band. And this is really the great thing. I mean, artists sometimes aren't that bothered about books, but when they have such a huge import and importance and sort of input from the fans of the band, I think they really like them. And now there's an interesting picture here. There is Paul Rodgers outside the cavern, getting a plaque there. He placed a brick in the wall. Now, I actually did a TV interview with him for Granada Television in the UK, which is they're a regional TV station in the northwest of England. And I did an interview with Paul at the Cavern for that, and it was a great show as well. It sold out in, I think, less than 20 minutes, which is fair enough, because the band Free played there. Bad Company played at the stadium, but Free played at the Cavern in the very early days of the band. So it was great for Paul to come back and actually do a gig there, and that's why he got his name on a brick in the wall. And it was a good night, that, I must say. So if you're a fan of Paul Rodgers, Simon Kirke, Paul Kossoff, Andy Fraser, that you will definitely like this. It's a wonderful book, some great reading in it, some wonderful pictures and images in there, and it does cover the various offshoot bands. So Bad Company are in there, Backstreet Crawler, the Andy Fraser Band, Sharks, and even Queen with Paul Rodgers. There's a lot of info in here. So if you're a fan, get it now. Available on This Day in Music. Go to the website, or you should find it in your bookstore if they're open during lockdown. I don't think they are, but if they are, then fine. But you also definitely find it on your online retailer. Well recommended.